the movie, the screening, the best, which I take to be, first of all, the highest compliment, because there is no tougher critic, but also great good hope for interest in talking about stuff.
Yeah, my 16-year-old grandchild.
I haven't worked with Bob Redford since Out of Africa. I mean, I've kept in touch, but he was wonderful to work with. He's so smart and so knowledgeable about all these issues, and so I relied on him.
Hollywood has witnessed many legendary farewells, but the moment Robert Redford passed away in September 2025 carried a very different aftershock. He did not just leave a void in cinema, but also unanswered questions that linger to this day. Amid thousands of tributes flooding the press and social media, there was only one that left the entire world in stunned silence: Meryl Streep's. Because what she said was not simply a farewell. It was like a door slightly opening, revealing a truth buried for decades. Between Redford and Streep, the line between friendship and something deeper had never been clearly defined. And it was precisely that choking tribute that once again made the public wonder, was it the loyalty of a rare friendship or a belated confession of a secret love never spoken? In the days of mourning covering Hollywood, the world was stunned by a memorial letter Meryl Streep sent to Robert Redford's family, later revealed by NBC on the Today Show broadcast from Rockefeller Plaza in New York. It was not an image of Meryl trembling in front of the camera, but scribbled words on a crumpled page smudged by tears that silenced America. Host Hoda Kotb's voice broke as she read each line, while the screen showed Meryl's tired face, silver hair left loose, and a simple gray cardigan draped around her shoulders. The letter began with a sentence that shook the hall: "A lion has fallen." To the world, Robert Redford is a legend. To me, he is a teacher, a friend, a soulmate. Every word pierced the audience's heart. In the letter, Meryl recounted a winter night in 1979 when she was torn between New York theater and Hollywood offers. Redford placed his hand on her shoulder and said, "Don't fear failure. Only fear when you don't dare to step forward." According to Meryl, that sentence changed the course of her life. She also revealed a secret never before made public. In 1984, when director Sidney Pollack hesitated about the female lead in Out of Africa, it was Redford who called and said, "Choose Meryl. She'll make this film immortal." That single phone call transformed Streep from a promising actress into a global star. Without Robert, there would be no Meryl Streep today, she wrote. The letter also mentioned a private memory on set in Kenya. During a riverside scene, Meryl was so nervous she trembled. Redford pulled her aside, handed her a hot cup of tea, and whispered, "Meryl, you don't need to act. Just live." The camera captured that very moment, and according to Sidney Pollack's 1999 interview with the Los Angeles Times, it was the most moving shot of his career. NBC reported that just hours after the letter aired, the clip of Kotb reading it surpassed 25 million online views, breaking the record of Kobe Bryant's 2020 memorial. Variety called it a television moment that froze America in silence. The Los Angeles Times noted, "Meryl didn't just say goodbye. She built a monument of memory for Redford. #Brewery's Lion Fell shot to the global top 1 flooding Twitter and TikTok. Vanity Fair's Richard Lawson wrote, "Among thousands of farewells, nothing haunted like the way Meryl compared Redford to a lion. It was the final crown for Hollywood's king." BBC simply remarked, "Never before has a personal tribute shaken the world like this." Right after audiences worldwide recalled the film that tied them together, Out of Africa. In Kenya's wilderness, their love story blossomed. They faced wild lions together, soared above Africa in the immortal Flying Over Africa sequence, creating an iconic image in cinema history. Yet, like every romantic tragedy, the story ended in heartbreak. Dennis, the free-spirited hunter, rejected marriage and died in a plane crash. His grave lay on the vast plains where lions would come to rest, gazing over the African fields. That is why Meryl's letter was not just a farewell, but also an eerie confirmation that between her and Redford existed a bond far beyond friendship, a secret the public had speculated on for nearly half a century. Everything began in 1985 when they starred together in Sidney Pollack's Out of Africa. The film won 7 Oscars, but what people remembered most was not the script or grand visuals, it was the almost real chemistry between Redford and Streep. Each touch, each gaze was so natural that many critics declared they weren't acting, they were truly in love. Years later in 1999, Meryl Streep admitted to the Los Angeles Times that during the hair-washing scene by the river, she felt as if I were really in love. That short remark was quickly turned into headlines. Meryl admits in love with Redford on screen, or off-fueling heated debates about their relationship. Just 1 year after the film's release in May 1986, People magazine published a piece claiming there were secret meetings between Redford and Streep in New York. According to a witness, they often visited an upscale apartment near Central Park and were seen dining intimately at Le Cirque, the Manhattan elite hotspot. The scandal peaked in May 1987 at the Cannes Film Festival. French paparazzo Jean-Claude Moreau claimed he photographed Redford and Streep holding hands along the Seine after Out of Africa's screening. On French TV, he revealed that the film roll was bought by a Hollywood producer for over $50,000 to bury the scandal. He insisted that wasn't acting anymore. Their eyes said it all. Back in the US, rumors spread so widely that during a Los Angeles press conference, a reporter asked Redford point blank, "Are you in love with Meryl Streep?" Redford only smiled and answered vaguely, "Love has many forms. Sometimes it doesn't need a name." His ambiguity fueled the fire. Even at the 1986 Oscars, when Streep received her statue, cameras caught Redford in the audience, his gaze burning. Tabloids like National Enquirer headlined Redford's eyes say more than 1,000 words. By the late 80s, Redford Streep was nearly every talk show's favorite topic. On The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson. 1988, Carson joked, "Robert, should we get a wedding cake ready here?" The studio burst out laughing, but Redford stayed silent, shrugging gently. His silence only deepened the audience's suspicion. The timing tangled with Redford's private life. He married Lola Van Wagenen in 1958 and divorced in 1985, right when Out of Africa exploded. The New York Post hinted Meryl appeared just as Redford was lonely. Later, when Redford remarried German painter Sibylle Zagers in 2009, she was asked about Streep rumors. According to the Daily Mail, she replied, "I'm not jealous of the past. Robert had soulmates of his own, and Meryl is one of them." Though both insisted they were just friends, strange details kept surfacing. In a 1990 BBC radio interview, Streep slipped, "Robert is the only man who makes me feel safe looking into his eyes for too long." The Independent splashed Meryl confesses feelings for Redford, reigniting debates. Colleagues also fanned the flames. Jane Fonda told Variety, "When Robert and Meryl are in the same room, you feel like they share a language no one else understands." An anonymous director told Vanity Fair, "I once saw Redford put his hand on Meryl's shoulder after a tough scene. The way he looked at her, I never saw him look at anyone else like that." This mix of intimacy and distance split public opinion. Some believed they were simply rare soulmates in Hollywood's false world. Others insisted it was a love that could never be revealed. Yet no one could deny their lasting bond of more than 40 years. Streep often flew to Utah to support Redford at Sundance. Redford never missed moments when Streep was honored at the Oscars or Golden Globes. Each appearance together drew cameras sparking whispers. Are they just friends or more? And when Meryl Streep choked up calling Redford a soulmate for over 40 years on NBC in September 2025, long-buried rumors stormed back like a hurricane. But Meryl Streep wasn't the only one mourning Redford. Immediately after, countless Hollywood stars spoke up, creating an unprecedented wave of tributes for the legend. Robert Redford's passing struck Hollywood like lightning. Within hours, the entertainment world and even global leaders were in grief. Yet what moved the public most were not stiff tributes, but deeply personal memories, hidden bonds, and long-kept stories finally revealed. Barbra Streisand was among the first to speak. She not only wrote a few lines, but also shared an unseen backstage photo of her and Redford laughing after a scene in The Way We Were, 1973. She wrote, "Behind the Spotlight." Robert was a mischievous man who always made me laugh. I'll remember that forever. Fans buzzed recalling rumors of her special feelings for him. The photo with their natural smiles hinted at an unspoken secret. Jane Fonda choked up on ABC News. Every time I acted with Robert, I fell in love with him all over again. Few knew that in 1979, amid her marital crisis, Redford took her to his Utah ranch for peace. A mutual friend told the Los Angeles Times Jane stayed for a week. Robert just listened without judging, without lecturing. He simply listened. For Jane, he was more than a co-star. He was the only shoulder when she was weakest. Director James Gunn called Redford a true movie star. He revealed Redford declined a role in Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2 due to health reasons. I'll regret missing that chance forever. Gunn admitted, showing that even young directors revered Redford as an untouchable icon. Antonio Banderas shared a surprising story. When he first arrived in Hollywood in 1993, nobody knew him. But Redford personally called a Paramount producer. "Give this young man a chance. I believe in him." Banderas said emotionally, "Robert opened my first door. He's the reason I stayed in Hollywood." Ron Howard, director of A Beautiful Mind, recalled a very simple moment I asked Robert why he named it Sundance. He laughed, "I didn't want it named after me. I wanted it to belong to everyone." Howard affirmed that humility made Sundance a home for thousands of independent filmmakers, from Quentin Tarantino to Darren Aronofsky. To Howard, Redford was not only a colleague, but a silent teacher who changed cinema's history. But Redford also had rivals and even enemies. In the 70s, he fought Hollywood moguls by openly criticizing censorship. Near the end of his life, he bluntly wrote in the Washington Post that Donald Trump had authoritarian tendencies undermining American democracy. When Redford died, Trump still admitted, he once had a period where no one could match him. I think he was great. A relationship of surface respect but inner conflict until the end. Of course, the heartfelt tributes extended further. Rosie O'Donnell wrote, "Oh Hubble, we'll never be the same. Good night, Bob." Stephen King posted on X Hard to believe Redford was 89. He was the symbol of a new Hollywood. Coleman Domingo Rita Wilson, Marlee Matlin, each tied Redford to a personal memory, a piece of advice, a chance, a festival that changed their careers. Looking at these tributes, one thing became clear. Robert Redford was not only a movie star, he was a friend, a soulmate, a teacher, an ally, and at times an unyielding opponent. He appeared as a complex yet genuine man, leaving his mark on every relationship, every life he touched. And after that unprecedented storm of grief, the public began to ask, how could a mischievous boy from California, once expelled from school for drinking, walk such a long journey to become a legend who made the whole world bow? Robert Redford was born in 1936 in Santa Monica, California, into a working-class family. His father, Charles Robert Redford Sr., was an accountant for Standard Oil, while his mother, Martha Hart, took on all kinds of odd jobs to make ends meet. Redford's childhood was far from smooth. Friends said young Robert was mischievous, often skipping school to draw caricatures, and was even warned by local police for stealing hubcaps. At 19, Redford received a baseball scholarship at the University of Colorado, a life-changing opportunity for the poor boy. But his recklessness made him lose it all. According to the Denver Post, Redford had his scholarship revoked after being caught drunk right on campus. He was expelled, leaving his family in shock. Later, Redford admitted, "I nearly lost everything because of alcohol and my own recklessness." That downward spiral, however, opened a fateful turn. After leaving school, Redford decided to wander across Europe. He roamed Paris, sketching on Pont Neuf to earn a few francs. In Florence, he studied painting, while in Rome, he sometimes had to sleep inside old churches. Once hitchhiking from Barcelona to Madrid, thieves stole all his belongings, forcing him to live in a student dormitory for weeks. That experience taught Redford that art was not only painting or stagecraft, but also the resilience to survive adversity. In the late 1950s, Redford returned to New York. At first, he enrolled at Pratt Institute to study stage design. But the stage lights drew him in more than any sketch ever could. He quickly switched to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. A teacher told the New York Times Robert wasn't the best student, but his eyes had a strange magnetism. When he looked, the audience couldn't turn away. In 1963, Redford shot to fame on Broadway with Neil Simon's Barefoot in the Park acting alongside Elizabeth Ashley. New York audiences went wild for the blonde young man with the radiant smile. The New York Post called him a fresh breeze on Broadway. This success soon brought Redford to Hollywood's attention. The real breakthrough came in 1969 when Redford starred with Paul Newman in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The film became a box office hit and turned Redford into a global icon. The name Sundance Kid stuck with him so firmly that later he used it to name both his resort and the film festival he founded. The Los Angeles Times commented at the time Paul Newman was the seasoned star, but Robert Redford was the one who kept audiences glued to the screen. In the 1970s, Redford continued to dominate the box office. With The Sting and The Way We Were Both released in 1973, he became the #1 male star for 3 consecutive years. Behind the scenes of The Way We Were, Barbra Streisand told Vanity Fair that she was so stunned by Robert's good looks that sometimes I forgot my lines. Although both always denied romance rumors, their chemistry became legendary. By the late 1970s, Redford was not only considered the most handsome man in the world according to People magazine, but also proved he could take on deep, complex roles in both drama and action. He was not just a golden face of the box office, but an actor Hollywood had to respect for his artistry. His journey from a rebellious boy, nearly losing his career to becoming a global star, is indeed a rare story. But what truly set Redford apart wasn't only acting. His bold decision to step behind the camera, becoming a director and the founder of Sundance, was what helped change American cinema itself. If the 1970s made Robert Redford a dazzling box office star, the 1980s opened a bigger shift. He stepped away from the glamorous image of a movie idol to become the godfather of independent film. In 1980, Redford founded the Sundance Institute in Utah. The location was not accidental. Since the late 1960s, he had bought hundreds of acres in the Wasatch Mountains, about 50 kilometers from Salt Lake City, as a retreat and ski place. At first, Redford only intended it as a creative retreat for friends. But after trips to Europe, where he saw independent cinema celebrated at Cannes and Venice, he had a daring thought: Hollywood also needs a place where small voices can be heard. He repeated that phrase many times throughout his career. Even in 2018, at age 82, he told the Associated Press, "The key word I always believe in is independence. I want forgotten voices to have a chance to be heard." From the beginning, Sundance became a launch pad for a whole generation of directors. Quentin Tarantino brought Reservoir Dogs 1992 there when no one knew him and instantly made waves. Steven Soderbergh's Sex, Lies, and Videotape 1989 also came from Sundance, paving the way for the American indie wave. Later, Paul Thomas Anderson, Darren Aronofsky, Kevin Smith, Catherine Bigelow all found their opportunity there. Few know that to keep Sundance alive, Redford had to sacrifice a lot. According to the Los Angeles Times, in the mid-1980s, when funds ran dry, many colleagues advised him to give up. No one wants to see independent films, but Redford refused to quit. He sold part of his land in Utah to maintain the Institute, a move deemed risky, but it saved Sundance from collapse. Sundance was not just a festival, it became a cultural movement. American media called Redford a gentle rebel who dared to defy Hollywood to protect forgotten stories. Critic Roger Ebert wrote, "Robert Redford changed the way we see cinema. He didn't just act, he created a whole generation of filmmakers. At times, the festival's growing glitz threatened to erode its original spirit." In 1994, when a major corporation wanted to sponsor and turn it into a giant advertisement box, Redford flatly refused. He accepted losing millions, but preserved the independence of Sundance. That decision solidified his image as an artist who never sold his soul to Hollywood. Today, Sundance is considered the largest independent film festival in the world, where countless A-list stars like Jennifer Lawrence, Ryan Gosling, or Carey Mulligan began their careers. The Guardian wrote in 2016, "Without Redford, perhaps there would be no Tarantino, Aronofsky, or Paul Thomas Anderson. He changed the DNA of American cinema." Thanks to Sundance, Redford is remembered not only as a handsome actor, but as a cultural revolutionary, a man who sacrificed personal wealth to keep a place for independent film. But behind the shining career, Redford's private life was filled with pain few expected. Family tragedies and quiet losses shaped his soul, perhaps making him deeper and more contemplative in every role. Behind the glory of a world-admired star, Robert Redford was a man who bore too many private sorrows. He rarely spoke of them, but they silently flowed into each of his roles, giving audiences a unique emotional depth. The first tragedy struck early. In 1959, at only 23 and just starting his acting career in New York, Redford and his first wife Lola Van Wagenen welcomed their first son, Scott. But only months later, the baby suddenly died of sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS. The tragedy happened in their small Manhattan apartment, leaving a wound the couple never healed from. In a rare interview with NPR in 2018, Redford admitted, "When my son died, I had just begun adulthood. I didn't know how to face it. I could only bury the pain. Time didn't heal." His second son, James. Jamie Redford, born in 1962, suffered from a rare liver disease since childhood. In 1993, Jamie underwent his first liver transplant at Stanford Medical Center, but months later needed a second one due to complications. Redford, at the peak of his career, dropped everything to stay by his son. A doctor told the Los Angeles Times Robert sat for hours by the bedside holding his son's hand in silence. He just smiled as if to give Jamie strength to go on. But fate was harsh. After years of struggle, Jamie passed away in 2020 from bile duct cancer at 58. Redford, then 84, wrote briefly on Twitter, "We lost a bright soul. Jamie was my light. the pain didn't end there. In 1983, his daughter Shauna Redford faced horror when her boyfriend Sid Wells was shot dead in his Boulder, Colorado apartment. At that moment, Redford was attending the premiere of The Natural in New York. A photographer told Vanity Fair, "I saw him standing alone backstage, eyes red. When I approached, Robert whispered, 'I don't know how to face Shauna anymore.'" The Sid Wells case remains unresolved, adding to the family's anguish. Beyond losing children, Redford's first marriage to Lola Van Wagenen ended after 27 years. Friends revealed that the family tragedies, the death of one child, another's illness, put unbearable strain on the marriage. Later, when Redford remarried artist Sybil Zagers, he told The Telegraph, "I lost too many people in life, and I learned that love should never be taken for granted." These shadows made Redford more private. He rarely showed emotions in public, instead channeling everything into his characters. That's why audiences watching him in Ordinary People 1980 or All Is Lost 2013 felt the raw honesty more than acting. They were wounds from life itself. One lesser-known detail in 1994, when Redford was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Berlin Film Festival, he almost refused. A source told The Hollywood Reporter he said he didn't deserve it, because at that moment, he felt filled only with loss. But in the end, Redford went on stage smiling calmly and said a line that silenced the hall. "Each of us carries darkness. I just try to turn mine into light on screen." His pride in facing tragedy created Redford's unique depth. People loved him not just for his timeless looks or talent, but for the way he turned personal pain into inspiration for millions. Perhaps it was these losses that led Robert Redford to choose a surprisingly simple farewell. When he passed away in September 2025, there were no lavish flowers, no golden casket, no thousands of guests, just a quiet farewell at his private ranch in Sundance, Utah, as his will had requested. On the morning of September 20th, the funeral took place under pine and juniper trees, where Redford often wrote scripts. The sky was clear, a breeze blowing gently with only birdsong and rustling leaves. No cameras, no press were allowed. Police set barricades 3 kilometers from the gate, leaving the media waiting outside. At the funeral, there was no priest, no choir, not even giant flower arrangements typical of a star's funeral. Only his wife, artist Sybil Zagers, his 2 daughters, Shauna and Amy, and 7 grandchildren sat in a circle surrounded by faint incense. Sybil held an old notebook reading pages Redford had written in 1991 after winning the Oscar for Ordinary People's success. Means nothing if we forget the silence of nature. When I die, let the wind and the mountains be my farewell. Hearing this, many wept. The funeral ended with a moment of silence. No music, no lamenting trumpet, only the sound of the wind through the forest, nature's most authentic hymn. The quiet in Utah that day surprised many, even sparking debate. People had imagined a legend like Redford would have a grand funeral with thousands of stars and a red carpet like a movie premiere. But reality was the opposite. He chose to leave as an ordinary man, closing his life in the embrace of family and nature. Yet only months later, across the country in Hollywood, came a completely opposite scene. In late November at the Dolby Theater in Los Angeles, the home of the Oscars, hundreds of stars gathered for a public memorial for Robert Redford. From the afternoon, Hollywood Boulevard was jammed with crowds. International media lined cameras, a red carpet stretched long like another Oscars night. But this time, the only absent star was the one honored. Inside, a giant screen replayed iconic moments. Redford riding with Paul Newman and Butch Cassidy in The Sundance Kid, smiling with Barbra Streisand in The Way We Were, gazing tenderly at Meryl Streep in Out of Africa. Each scene brought sobs from the audience. Meryl Streep in a simple black dress stepped on stage and choked. "Robert was my soulmate. When a lion falls, the whole forest changes forever." The audience went silent, then broke into tears. Jane Fonda trembled as she said, "At times in life, Robert was the only one I trusted. I loved him both on screen and off." Barbra Streisand lifted an unpublished backstage photo of herself and Redford laughing together. The hall erupted in emotion. A standing ovation lasted 10 minutes. A Variety editor wrote, "This was Robert Redford's final Oscars. Not an award, but the world's bow to a legend." Thus, side by side, the private funeral in Utah and the dazzling Hollywood memorial created two shocking contrasts. One was serene peace in the mountains where Redford departed as a simple man. The other was radiant glory where Hollywood and the world cried for an immortal star. Robert Redford ended his journey in simplicity, but the legacy he left is brilliant and eternal. From Meryl Streep's soulful tribute to Jane Fonda and Barbra Streisand's trembling memories, it all shows Redford was not just a star, but part of Hollywood's collective memory. The man is gone, but his films, his stories, and even the secrets surrounding him will forever keep audiences curious. And you, what do you think of the friendship, or perhaps love, between Robert Redford and Meryl Streep? Share your thoughts in the comments so we can talk together. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you'll always hear the most striking backstage stories of Hollywood you've never known before.